Hello, fellow Megatenists! Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Raidou Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army was released 19 years ago in America and Japan, 18 years ago if you're from the PAL region. A blend of unique ideas that could only come from the collective minds of Kazuma Kaneko, Shogo Isugai, and Kazuyuki Yamai, as well as Shigeo Komori and Shoji Meguro and Eiji Ishida. Not to wax poetic too much on the creative collective that brought us Raidou, but the plot, setting, and music were so fresh, unique, and interesting, but collectively most people agree it was held back by its gameplay. I played this game when it came out and the sequel shortly thereafter and returned to it 5 years ago. Some of that playthrough is still on my channel, by the way. What do I think of this remaster? Well, let's talk about it. I feel like I have to express that generally speaking, I do not like remasters or remakes in general, as I have no qualms with returning to a game that I like, even if it's older. I feel like I also need to state the conditions I played this game under. I essentially marathoned this game over the course of a week, and while that was very much possible, my normal playstyle of games is usually casual sessions of 2 to 3 hours at a time. For this game, I did play very long sessions, with my longest play period being approximately 15 hours, with light breaks between. This is important to keep in mind for context of my criticisms, as I don't truly think this game was made to be played in the style that I played it at. Without further ado, let's talk Raidou. The combat system is overhauled quite a bit. It's a lot more like the Raidou 2 battle style, with additional skills and spells Raidou can now use. Now, to many this will be a huge improvement because Raidou 1 has gameplay that is pretty bland in terms of the battle system. I personally didn't hate it per se, but it was very rudimentary. The changes I'm mixed on because they do emphasize action and require you to be more engaged, which I think to some people is an improvement, but with the amount of button mashing, it was genuinely uncomfortable for me, and it became more tedious in that regard. Some things felt great, like added lock-on in battles. The sword skills and spirit slashes and other new components are so stylish and unique in a way that feels like it's reminiscent of the dynamism of Persona, but also more exclusively Raidou because of the tokusatsu elements. And I think they explored a lot of what makes Raidou Raidou. A lot of this felt like an exploration of how can we enhance what already exists and how can we expand on what's not there yet. One aspect of the battle system that I didn't feel was improved very much was the shooting mode. It was changed, but it didn't feel like a large improvement. It just felt like a change to me. Shooting was something that felt like they tried to improve it, but they couldn't figure out how. It felt like something that could be ignored, which is what I did. I tried to avoid shooting as much as possible because of how uncomfortable and how useless it was for the most part. I feel like guns are integral to Raidou's identity, and in order to really make Raidou stand out, at least when it comes to Raidou 2 or any other potential sequel, they need to explore how to make the gunplay a lot more interesting, because this was very tedious, it was clunky. Oftentimes when you try to navigate that little menu, I was confused at first for the first chapter of how to even make it work because I didn't really read the tutorial, which is my fault. When you see the overall effects of the damage, you don't really feel like it's enough to warrant using it again. Sword alchemy was another fun addition, mildly giving Monster Hunter vibes. The customization of the sword is very nice and adds depth to the grind. I think it's not a robust enough system yet to really have much to say about. I did pay attention and spend a few extra moments grinding for specific parts just to upgrade the sword because of the payoff. And when you pair that with the skills that you can swap out at will, it really improves Raidou's output and efficiency, and Raidou becomes a lot more powerful as a result. When you pair that also with the fact that demons can gift you things, and you can capture multiples of the same demon, you could farm for specific parts fairly easily. Now, demons have changed quite a bit. New demons have been added and functions and settings are changed. For instance, to capture demons, you don't have to button mash anymore, you can simply hold the button. I think this is a great accessibility option if you can't button mash reasonably or comfortably, but I think it's also just anti-gaming in a way. It's ungamifying the game, because now you're not button mashing for the purpose of trying to beat out the meter in order to capture the demon. I also have a lot of disdain for how the camera in the battle system hasn't really been refined. In battles, you have to manually adjust the camera, which can be disorienting and hurt your play. I found myself dying sometimes because I was trying to jump, turn the camera, and orient my demons all at once, and one of those things should not be a requirement for play, especially in the more hectic moments of the battles, like when there's multiple demons out or a specific niche boss battle. Demons also gain EXP passively, so Not just the demons you summon gain EXP, but all the demons in the tubes a la EXP share from Pokemon. You also don't have to switch through demons, you can just press the button when you see a prompt for specific skills that demons have in the overworld, which I actually like a lot because I'm lazy. And the skills I'm talking about are specific skills that demons have that affect humans in the overworld. These are things that help with investigation, these are things that help with quest navigation, and it's also helpful for side quests and little bits of insight to the lore. In addition to all of the things that I said, they also added a lot of side quests, which I appreciate quite a bit as it builds out the world and makes it feel more lived in. Raidou is one of the few games within the Megaten pantheon that actually makes use of the NPCs outside of the major story. So if you ever feel a new story beat, go back and talk to the NPCs. They all have a little bit of character and there is some actual growth within specific NPCs. I would very much take advantage of that, which brings me to my favorite change, and it's the detective journal. It has all the lore, and if you don't know Raidou's lore prior to 2025, meaning you didn't watch my videos about Raidou, you would have to just read a Japanese-only book, or books, like the Raidou fan book, but now there's a lot of lore explained and explored right in the game, translated to the first time in English ever. The sheer amount of things you can learn make my videos on the Kuzunoha kind of null and void at this point. I would highly recommend, after you've played the game, to go through the journal because some of the journal is a little spoilery or it teases major spoilers, which if you're smart you can figure out just through reading, so I would definitely recommend not doing that. In saying that, another criticism I have is in between chapters they do some like cutscene stuff which shows just a random collage of cutscenes, and those are kind of spoilery, especially if you're not dumb and able to piece together some of the things you see. It's too much information. I think they should have only done that in the way of showing cutscenes relating to what's going to happen in that chapter that you're about to play rather than the entire game, because that makes it bad. But there also isn't enough new cutscenes or cutscenes in general within the game to justify that kind of choice. My second favorite new addition is the dash function. I just like to run fast, and this is always a welcome addition for remasters for me. Much of the Demon Fusion changes just modernize the process for better or worse. I never truly engaged with the Demon Fusion stuff in Atlus games in depth, so I can't really speak on whether or not I care about the changes. It was more convenient for me to do the reverse fusions rather than trying to just fuse randomly to find things. And I do like that, and that's kind of my go-to when I play games with fusion. But overall, the fusion stuff I don't really have a lot to say about. And I can mention another change I really didn't like, which is Nakisawame healing for free. I think that's kind of bad. I think it just lowers the difficulty. They should have instead made the healing for free a thing that happens in lower difficulty settings and not the default for all difficulty settings. Making it unilaterally free nerfs the difficulty and the stakes, and it does a similar thing to the quick save where it does remove like the fear of losing progress, which for some people is a positive, but for me it's a negative. You can also teleport straight to Gomeden or Konaya, which is actually not a bad thing for me. It's just a thing that's neutral. I like that it's kind of added because it does kind of add continuity to games like this and Shin Megami Tensei 5, which has a similar function through the dragon veins, which this also has dragon veins. So for people who are more familiar with SMT5, this helps bridge the gap and makes it feel like it's something that's a consistent thing. So as for the other changes, I don't really want to run down every single change. There's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that's either delicate surface level changes or deeper mechanic changes that improve or change the bones of the game. This means overall the original game is still there, but with some changes. The original game for me, upon release, was something I enjoyed on every level: music, plot, gameplay, and especially art. During my replay 5 years ago, I noted that the gameplay more seriously had problems with the camera movement, especially the battle system being superficial and incredibly repetitive, and it was probably the only aspect of the original experience I truly didn't care for. Raidou 2 tries to address many perceived flaws with the original game, and that truly is what laid the foundation of the changes of this game, like I said earlier. I'd argue that in terms of presentation and plot, this experience is truly the best version of Raidou, with or without the gameplay changes. Because even with this, I think that the gameplay still isn't 100% perfected. A lot of ways it felt like a sidestep in terms of making changes that didn't make the gameplay better, it just made the gameplay more diverse. Sometimes adding more options doesn't actually fix the problems, And again, there were some still major problems in there, like the camera. I personally am not very much into button mashing, so that did factor into my enjoyment. I didn't like pushing the same button over and over, or cycling through a couple of different buttons even. Adding those extra buttons as things to spam didn't really make me feel better. I did also build Raidou to be a strength build, which does change the gameplay. Strength versus magic is very different in this game because of the skills that you get. So I could have some problems with the gameplay because of my choice in building Raidou that way. Another thing about the gameplay changes is the original game was not voiced, nor did it have animated portraits, though Raidou 2 did have the animated portraits thing. The amount of voice acting and the portraits really build out the world and actually significantly improve it for me. I like that they didn't really change the models to look anything removed from Kaneko, so it still has a lot of that identity. And the voice acting, I have a lot of things to say about. I'll be honest, I prefer the Japanese voice acting more, and it's not because I'm someone who prefers subs over dubs. It's just because when I have the thought of 1931, I have a very specific certain style of speech in mind. And that isn't reflected in the English performance necessarily. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And part of it has to do with the way that they wrote the dialogue, and it has a very specific way of being presented. But I don't think every voice actor was either coached through or understood how to make it sound more natural, so sometimes it sounded stiff or very weird or awkward when they would try to speak in period accurate speech. Obviously, this is translated and localized, so the translation and localization changes it from period-specific Japanese to period-specific English. And that is hard to also navigate because as a localizer, you have to be pretty profoundly knowledgeable of what that would sound like, and maybe that could have been the script that's making it really uncomfortable for me. But overall, I had some criticisms towards the voice acting in that regard. And this doesn't affect all the voice acting, it's mostly side characters, I would argue. Characters like Goto and Narumi were strong and their voice acting was great in English and Japanese, but I did have a lot of concerns of the voice acting outside of those two. Overall, if I had to summarize my thoughts, I would say Raidou Remastered is worth purchasing if you played the original and want to play it again. The changes run the gambit between feeling unnecessary and also feeling very much needed. Mostly the latter though, not so much the former. The game is also worth playing if you're new to Raidou and you just want to play Raidou. It's the best iteration, and actually, in my mind, it takes a seat amongst the best remasters that Atlus has ever made, which if you played Atlus games, you know that that list is not very long. The only way I wouldn't recommend this is if you played the original and didn't like the gameplay, because the gameplay doesn't make that much of a change to become enjoyable for all. It is still a button masher, it's still an action game, and if you don't like either of those things, you're not going to enjoy the gameplay, regardless of how interesting and amazing the story is, and the music is, and the art is, and the animation is, and the performances are. None of that will make you like the game if you don't like that kind of gameplay. It still has very significant flaws, but a lot of what I think were problems that a lot of people voiced about, a lot of that has been fixed. And that's it for my review. I expected to be a little more in-depth, but I wanted to instead talk about points that I thought mattered a lot and that wouldn't be addressed by other people doing reviews. So if you like this video, I might do a follow-up going a lot more in depth, mostly because of the time concerns. I got the review code on Thursday of last week, meaning I played the game for a little under a week and had to beat it and write the script and record the script and edit the script. So if you like this video, I might do a follow-up. Otherwise, I'll just return to doing some of the big projects that I have on my plate as they balloon more and more out of control into 2 to 4 hour experiences. Thanks for watching this video. Goodbye, fellow Megatenists.